Shakira from the Lawrence Hall of Science. These days, I've been feeling really happy because the weather has been getting warmer and spring is coming soon. So, spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Do you know what these are called? You guessed it, they're seasons. So, I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with the concept of seasons. But have you ever thought about why we have seasons? Or do you know that some parts of the world don't have four seasons like we do? Well, the answer to that actually lies in our orbit around the sun.
At this point, I think we all know that the Earth orbits the Sun. But how exactly does the Earth orbit the Sun? To understand seasons, we must first understand the details of the Earth's orbit. More specifically, we must first think about the Earth's axial tilt. The Earth rotates around its axis as it orbits the Sun. But it turns out that the Earth's rotation axis is not straight. Our axis is actually tilted by approximately 23.4 degrees to the vertical. As we revolve around the Sun, the Earth is tilted in the same direction. As a result, the rays from the Sun hit different parts of the Earth differently throughout the year.
A major effect of the axial tilt can be seen in the length of day and in the altitude of the sun during the solar noon throughout the year, which just means how high the sun is in the sky during noon. This affects the intensity of sunlight that reaches the Earth.
To understand this further, let's take a look at how the Earth looks like around June. Notice how the Earth's north pole tips towards the Sun while the south pole tips away. Essentially, this explains why the northern hemisphere, which is basically the upper half of the Earth, including us in the United States, experiences summer during this time of the year. During summer, the Earth's tilt causes the sun to be higher up in the sky. When we zoom in, we can see that the sunlight hits the Earth's surface at a high angle, which means that solar radiation is spread over a smaller area, causing light to be received at a higher intensity, thus making the temperature hotter.
Other than it being really hot, what else do you notice that's different during the summer? It has something to do with when the sun rises and when the sun sets. If you want, you can pause the video and think about it for a bit. Hmm, have you thought about it? That's right. During summers, the days are longer.
The length of day is also a result of the Earth's tilt. Notice that the sunlight covers a larger surface area of the Earth in the northern hemisphere. The large surface area covered by the sun in the northern hemisphere means that this side of the Earth is exposed to sunlight much longer, which explains why the sun rises earlier and sets later during the summer.
Due to the high intensity of sunlight and the longer length of day, this region of the Earth basically spends more time heating up rather than cooling down during this time of the year. Which is why summer days are very hot and summer nights are relatively warm as well.
Now let's fast forward about 6 months later in December, where us in the US would typically have winter. This time, pay attention to how the North Pole tips away from the Sun and the South Pole tips towards the Sun. As a result, the Sun covers a smaller surface area in the Northern Hemisphere. This is the opposite of what happens during the summer. We spend less time being exposed to the sunlight, so during winter, we tend to have shorter days and longer nights. In the winter, the sun hits the Earth's surface at a low angle, which means that the sunlight is spread over a larger area, so the light received is more indirect and at a lower intensity. Since the sunlight is not as strong during the winter and we have longer nights and shorter days, we spend more time cooling down rather than heating up during this time of the year, which explains why winters are really cold.
But how about on the other side of the Earth? Do you think someone in, say, Australia will experience the same seasons as us? Well, technically, the answer is yes, They will have the same four seasons as we do, but the catch is they will experience the opposite season from us.
In December, when the northern hemisphere is experiencing winter, the southern hemisphere, which is the lower half of the Earth, is experiencing summer. Notice that although the sunlight covers a smaller surface area in the northern hemisphere, it covers a larger area in the southern hemisphere. As we focus on this part of the Earth and move forward to June, we can see that it is yet again opposite to the northern hemisphere. When we experience summer in the United States, someone in New Zealand is experiencing winter. Because now the South Pole tips away from the sun and the sunlight covers a smaller surface area in this region. In between summers and winters, the Earth continues to revolve around the sun and the tilt continues to face in the same direction. Around March and September, the Earth neither tilts away or towards the sun, so the sunlight covers approximately equal areas on both hemispheres. As a result, we have approximately the same length of day and night, and the temperature is neither too hot nor too cold. During this time period, we typically have spring and autumn. This is also why spring and autumn are sometimes called transition seasons. In the northern hemisphere, we experience spring around March and autumn around September. But in the southern hemisphere, the seasons are still the opposite. So they would have autumn in March and spring in September.
So we know that the northern and the southern hemispheres experience opposite seasons regardless of the time of the year. But what if you're not really on the upper half or on the lower half? What if you're somewhere in the middle? Would you still experience seasons the same way?
The answer is not really. When you're near the Earth's equator, which is an imaginary line running around the Earth's middle, notice how the total area covered by the sun remains relatively equal all year round. As a result, these areas have approximately the same temperature and the same length of day and night all year.
So, someone who lives near or on the equator, like someone in Indonesia, which is actually where I'm from, they don't experience the four seasons like the northern and the southern hemispheres. Instead, they usually only have two seasons, the dry season and the rainy or wet season.
Since there's little annual fluctuation of sunlight, the seasons in this region are thanks to the Intertropical Convergence zone, which you can think about kind of like a band of clouds encircling the Earth near the equator. These clouds cause the rain levels in these areas to vary more dramatically than temperature. When the zone is north of the equator, places in those areas will experience their wet season, where they usually get a lot of rain and thunderstorms. Meanwhile, places south of the equator will experience the opposite, the dry season, where it's really hot and humid. And vice versa. When the zone moves below the equator, these areas will experience the wet seasons, and the places north of the equator will experience the dry season.
And with that, we've reached the end of our video today. I hope you found it interesting how the Earth's axial tilt allows for seasons to happen, and I hope you had fun learning about how the seasons vary in different parts of the Earth. You know, when we say keep asking big questions about the universe, these are the kind of questions that we were talking about. Seasons may be something that we're used to, but when we actually take the time and ask, we can discover amazing things. And with that, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time, and as always, keep asking big questions about the universe. Bye!